Hey y'all, it's Brandy here, and finally got a minute while the baby is asleep to get on here and share the birth story. So if he wakes up, I don't know what I'll do. So I'll try not to make this too long. But if there's something I left out, you can ask me. This was a totally different birth than my first three, probably because I had to get induced and I was a week overdue and all that stuff. But I wanted to share it anyways. I like to hear other people's, encouraging birth stories and how God moved and different things. So I had shared on here a while back briefly about my other three all natural, non medicated, supernatural childbirths. And so with my first three boys, I had them without any medicine, just natural deliveries. And with the first two, I had a doula. I had my husband helping me coach. My husband coached me, and I also had a doula, Doula, if you want to look it up. And you can hire a doula. And we had a sweet Christian lady, Miss Cindy Sobel. All of our first three boys were born in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia, at a hospital called St. Mary's. And our fourth boy was born in West Virginia at a hospital called St. Mary's in Huntington. And I ended up using Dr. Chamberlain, who is an OB, and he was great. The nurses at St. Mary's were great. And so I would highly recommend that hospital and that OB. And the hospital, St. Mary's, is actually a baby-friendly hospital. And they had to go through a lot of certifications and a lot of different things to get the baby-friendly status. And so they were just wonderful to us there at the hospital. And so anyways, so here's the birth of my fourth son. What happened was I was a week overdue. I went to, 41 weeks, and so the doctor wanted to induce me on December 10th because I was a week overdue, and I'd never done that either. With my other three boys, I had them at 40 weeks. I mean, they came right on time, and I think with this one, I was just so nervous about living in another state, not having our close friends and family here, like I had in Georgia, and I felt like I was maybe even emotionally stalling the labor because I just wasn't ready. I was just in a new state, a new home. We don't even have a house. We're just still in this apartment, and the baby doesn't have his own room. He's just sharing a room with us, and just a lot of changes that we had gone through. And so I just felt like I just wasn't releasing or whatever to let baby number 4 come. But whatever, that's just kind of a thought I had. And so I thought, well, this baby, he's gotta get here. He's gotta be here. And so I didn't want to be induced because Pitocin, the contractions with the Pitocin that they give you, they're so much stronger and harder because it's not natural. It's they're trying to imitate the natural hormone that your body produces during labor, but it's not your own body going in labor like God designed it to. So, but anyways, I trusted that the Lord led us to that doctor and to those hospitals. So I was just trusting that if the Lord wanted me to be induced, he would have to just give me the grace to go with it. And with the first three, as well as with this fourth birth, I was not opposed to medication. Like I told John and the doula and the hospital staff that I said, look, I want a natural birth, but if I ask for medicine, give it to me. Like, if I'm in pain, I'm going to ask for medicine. But with the first three, I just wasn't in pain. I didn't need the medicine. It felt good to labor naturally. It felt good to push and to know when to do what. But with this one, it was different. Here's what happened. So on December 10th, they wanted to induce me. So we left the house at 4:50 a.m. on December 10th. My parents came from Georgia and they took the kids to school. And so John and I got to the hospital at 5:33 a.m. in Huntington. It was about 45 minutes from our house. I did eat breakfast that morning at like 4:30 a.m. I ate breakfast. I don't remember what I ate, but I always eat breakfast. I've got to have my breakfast. So we checked in at St. Mary's at 6 a.m. and I had something called Group B strep, which some women have it in their bodies and some don't. And so I had it with my first child, and they gave me the IV antibiotics. And I didn't have it with the other two, but then I had the Group B strep with this one, so they have to give you IV antibiotics. So they gave me my first round of IV antibiotics around 8 a.m. and they started the Pitocin at 8:30 a.m. So that's how they induced me, is they gave me Pitocin through an IV in my right arm. Okay. Then the contractions started increasing, but I didn't have any pain, thankfully. The nurse kept saying, how's your pain? How's your pain? And I was like, I don't have any pain. And I said, but with the first three, I didn't have pain. I said, so I don't know what you're looking for. I said, I'm having contractions. I'm just not having pain. And, she kept saying, what's your pain level? What's your pain level? And I was like, well, I'm fine, And so we had our church and school praying for me, and I really could feel the prayers all day that day, during the day on the 10th. I mean, it was like an amazing labor from that morning until about 5 o'clock. It was like the best labor ever. It was just amazing. And I could feel the prayers, and there wasn't pain. And so then my husband, he wrote a letter for his True Vine World Ministries, and he had me edit it while I was in labor. Like, I read through it, made the grammatical corrections while I was in labor. He rubbed my lower back. Sometimes my back, would need rubbing, and he would do that. They told me, when they induce you, they don't want you to eat food. Well, like, I was hungry because I'd eaten breakfast at like 4:30 a.m. So I was hungry, but they don't want you to eat food in case you have to have a C-section. But thankfully, the nurses let me eat Jell-O and applesauce, and so they were bringing me more Jell-O and more applesauce, and I was sipping on some kind of energy type, like a glucose healthier energy type drink I'd ordered online. So I was sipping on that, and they increased my Pitocin at 10:40 a.m. Then we went for a walk down the hospital hallway at about 11 a.m. And they had the hospital decorated really pretty for Christmas with Christmas trees, and so it was pretty to look at. My back started hurting around 12:06. So they were like, okay, get on your hands and knees. If you're having back labor, maybe that'll flip your baby or whatnot. So I tried that. Then they checked me at 1:03, and I was only 5 centimeters. I still had no pain by 2:20 p.m. We were watching the Food Network, and we were watching Christmas cooking on the TV, and we were watching Hallmark movies. And so, sorry, I just got a phone call. So we were watching the Food Network and watching, Hallmark movies and things. Hey, Missy. So then my doctor, my OB, Dr. Chamberlain, came in, and they decided to break my water since I still hadn't had the baby. He thought that if they induced me at 6 a.m. that I would have the baby by 6 p.m. Well, I hadn't yet. So the OB came in at 6:35 p.m. on December 10th, and he broke my water. And then they checked me at 9 p.m. and by 9 p.m. I was exhausted because I had been laboring all day with no food except for Jell-O and applesauce, and I was just tired. I was sleepy. My body had been working hard all day long. They had been pumping my body full of fluids and IV antibiotics and Pitocin, and I hate all that. Like, cause I don't even take Tylenol. Like, normally, I don't take any medicine at all. So to have fluids and IV antibiotics pumped in me all day long, yuck. Like, that's just, I didn't like that. So I still feel like my face is swollen from all that. They kept saying that the right side of my cervix was still thick. Only the right side, which I'd never heard in my life. Like, that was weird to me. And they kept telling me, well, lay on your right side, which I hated because having to breathe through a contraction while you're laying down is a real pain. It's easier to sit up or stand up or rock or move when you're having a contraction when you don't have medicine. But when they tell you to lay down on your right side during a contraction, it's really hard. It makes it painful. So then the nurses tried to get me to push around 10:15 p.m. because I kind of felt like I needed to push. I felt like I was in transition without medication. I still didn't have any medication. It was like, you know, I could feel everything, and I felt like I was in transition for way too long. And I got nauseous. I got sick. I got really hot. All that happens when you're in transition. So then I tried pushing around 12:20 a.m. I was tired, but I didn't really feel the urge to push. And the nurses are used to people having epidurals, and they're used to having to tell people when to push. And I was trying to tell them, look, I don't really feel the urge to push yet. I don't think I need to be pushing yet. And they were trying to get me to push. So then they decided, okay, well, don't push yet. You must not be ready to push. So just don't. Well, then I was tired from trying to push too soon. And that can cause issues. So then by 1 a.m., this is the middle of the night, you know, I was like, John, get me an epidural. Like, the contractions are getting stronger. I've been in transition way too long. Like, I need to go to sleep. I'm tired. So he was like, what? You want an epidural? Like, are you sure? He was like, are you serious? I was like, yes. I said, get me an epidural. Well, the lady was at home in the bed. So she didn't get there till 2 a.m., an hour later. And so I got my epidural. It was the first epidural I had ever gotten. I got it at 2 a.m. And I wasn't scared because by that time I was just so exhausted. I was like, I need some relief so I can go to sleep. So after that, I laid down and rested after I got the epidural. And I slept some. And the nurse would come in there and turn me over from side to side, because when you get an epidural, they have to keep your body kind of turning from side to side because of the epidural. So, and you know, my legs had, they didn't give me a strong epidural because they knew it was my first one, and I didn't really want a strong one, so I could still kind of feel the contractions. Then the nurse woke me up at 6 a.m. and said, okay, honey, it's time to push. And I was like, what? I just want to go back to bed. Like, I'm sleepy. And so I had to use, and all this time I was using my essential oils, and I will probably post a different video on my essential oils page to tell you specifically how I use the essential oils and what I use them for, because that's a whole nother thing, because they helped me a ton. And so I drank my Ningxia Red drink and my oils before I pushed to give me the energy to wake up and push a baby out. So at 6 a.m. I started pushing, and I didn't have them till 6:54 a.m. on December 11th. A whole day later. I was in labor for 23 hours. So, but he was a healthy baby. He was 8 pounds, 12 ounces, 21.5 inches long. He was a big baby, had a 3rd-degree tear. And after that, my hemoglobin was a little low, which had never happened before. So they told me to take iron. And this has been the slowest recovery I've ever had after a baby. And I think it's because of all of the antibiotics, fluids, epidural, all of the induction, just all of that being forced on my body all at once. And then I had no swelling for my whole pregnancy, but after I got the epidural, the nurses told me, they said, this epidural is going to cause your ankles and feet and legs to swell, and it did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never had swelling in my life until I got an epidural. So of course then I had my husband rub my feet down with lemon and lavender oil and coconut oil to help the swelling. But anyways, it went down, but I just felt like afterwards my face and feet were swollen, and I was just tired, and I wasn't taking enough iron, I found out later. And so that was making me just weak and fatigued and tired, and I was nursing all the time, and I was just I don't know, I felt great right after I had them, other than being sleepy. But it's taken me up until yesterday, so it's almost been 2 weeks. Like yesterday, I finally started feeling normal, like back to myself. So this has been the longest recovery. Like, it's taken 2 weeks for me to feel like, getting up and cleaning up the house and stuff. But I don't know why. I don't know. But so that's kind of the story. And like I said, if you want to know the essential oil side of my labor, and even what oils I've been using for recovery, there's this really cool spray bottle that's already made up that you can use. It's been amazing. I've almost used the whole thing, and so I can share all that on my essential oils page on a separate one. But they did help me a lot. And all the nurses said, man, you should hire your husband out as a doula. He's good. I guess they weren't used to seeing husbands coach their wife through labor. Like, the lady next door came in, she got induced with Pitocin like I did, and she had her baby 4 hours later. But they gave her Pitocin, and then they gave her the epidural like right there together. So they probably just cranked up the Pitocin, and and her husband was out in the hallway and didn't even go in there. And John was like, what? Like, I've been helping my wife breathe through every contraction. So they were like, you should hire him as a doula. So John was a great coach, and I definitely could not have done all this without John being there. Oh, and this, I had scriptures written out. And if you want to know which scriptures that we use during labor, I can, send you a copy of these verses. And of course, if you want a copy of my birth plan, which we didn't get to go by all of it this time because I got induced, but if you want to see my birth plan, I can show you that. And if you're into oils, this book is amazing. So that really helped me know which oils to use during labor and stuff. So anyways, I hope that didn't scar you for life. But really, that's that was how Titus got here. And after I finally had him, they had to really push on my belly to where his shoulders were to get his shoulders out. John said, the doctor stayed calm, but I was just so thankful that big old baby arrived without a C-section. I'm just so thankful. So anyways, Titus, gosh, I did not think he was going to be 8'12". He's my biggest baby yet. Benjamin was 8'5", Elijah was 8'7", and then I prayed for a 7-pound baby, and John David was 7 pounds. But then Titus was 8:12, but he was a week overdue. So, anyways, that's where we're at, and that was his story. And if I left anything out, y'all feel free to ask me questions. And so anyways, love y'all and have a good night. Bye.